I was bidding 57 to 59K for a bounce to 65. Do you think it's worth bidding that again, or probably go lower if we go back? It's a good question. I think you basically missed it. Like there's a reason why I posted about this support here this morning, because I was like, I mean, if it's gonna bounce somewhere, it's gonna bounce here. And yeah, that's where it bounced. So if it goes back there again, I think it's fucked. I think that's cooked. So yeah, you kind of missed that trade. Wouldn't wanna. I really wouldn't want to take the okay, I'm buying 59K to like selling 65K again trade. I think that's a terrible one. I think if anything, you buy the support and you sell that, and that's that. But yeah, so before we start the show, big shout out to Woo for sponsoring it. Really appreciate their support. Go check them out. Links are in the description. They've been awesome partners and deserve some support, at least from us. You guys don't have to support them if you don't want to. The chart looks pretty ready to skyrocket. I would honestly not say so. If anything, it looks quite choppy. And I mean, this is how it would look like on a move down where people are still very hype. Like that's generally how, like, look. And I mean, I'm not bad-hearting here. It bounced from support, right? But if you look anywhere during like down moves, you would say the exact same thing, right? Like there's like obviously like maybe not here where it just went straight down, but like for example, you had this top here, right? At 64K. So you had this kind of like nuke, and then you had the reclaim, and people said the exact same thing, like holy shit, it's so close to where it was before. This is ready to shoot into, like it just looks ready to go. But it wasn't, and it didn't. And so I like these kind of low time frames, I would not necessarily make these kind of grand predictions on. If anything, the weekly and the monthly are important for that. But yeah, it is bouncing from support, and it's actually bouncing quite strongly. So it's much nicer than it was yesterday. A part of that is the S&P doing quite well, but a part of that is also just people being bearish into support. And it's actually exactly playing out how we talked. Like we talked about this not that long ago. Like in here somewhere, I was like, people are not going to believe. And this was on I think the Wednesday stream, but I might misremember. Might have been the Friday ones. But where I was like, people are gonna be not believing that this can go lower, and then they're gonna start like listening to me the moment it's gonna hit the support, and then it's gonna bounce. And that's pretty much exactly what's playing out here, right? Like people were like, you're a moron basically for being bearish, and then it went down. Like I mean, in total it didn't even actually went down that much, like 17%, almost 20%, but still like it went down quite a bit, liquidated a bunch of people, actually like a shitload of people, and it went into the support we talked about and then bounced. Don, why didn't you bid 60K? Because I don't buy shallow pullbacks, even if this is the bottom. Like I just don't. Why did you FUD at the bottom, Doug? I literally posted a chart like this chart, and I can even give you the receipts. Like people just cannot read my tweets, I think. Like no matter what I tweet, people just take it the wrong way. Look, I literally posted, it's support nonetheless, so fresh shorts seem ill-advised. Could easily bounce a few thousands or reverse from here. Literally this support. Where we're trading right now, like we went from this support higher. just, and I even talked about it on this show, and people are still gonna misunderstand. Is what it is. You said you see it to go 265, 66 to cred, yeah, but I mean people people apparently don't listen. Is what it is. Like generally, like, so when you're in this kind of situation, right, and we can do a little bit of educational whatever the fuck. And I'm not saying like this is a top or whatever, but if you're in a toppy situation, right, where you have like intermediate topping, how that is almost always going to play out, and I kind of gave an example with the one previously, is that you're gonna like have like bulls are gonna be quite stubborn for a while. So basically what you get is you get a nuke, you get quite a strong bounce, that fizzles out, you get quite a strong bounce again, and that fizzles out, and at some point it gets so shit that everyone's kind of in alignment, like, okay, this is shit, and it's actually gonna go down, and then usually it just kind of nukes. So you wouldn't necessarily like expect this to dump like this. This is not how markets work unless some ginormous FUD is hitting, or unless you had a massive blow off top, right? Like if the market went from 60 to 100k in a straight line and then nuked, then you can have these kind of moves, but it didn't. Like, it moved quite fast, but it's not like this is like completely vertical. I would say we're at this point, we didn't do that point. Okay, so you're generally obviously always going to expect bounces along the way, and I would argue this is one for now, but it is quite a nice move, and it comes with the trad market moving quite well too. Bro, your replies on Twitter are wild. Yeah, they're fucking terrible. They've turned really, really bad, and they go worse and worse. Why don't you like 52 as support? I don't hate it. I just like look on the daily time frame. We'll go over the higher time frames in a sec. This is just, I'm talking about this one because this is the one we've been talking about quite extensively. So I started off with this. We had a range here, and like a quite extensive one. The first and only real consolidation, the whole ETF going live thing happened in this area. So this is really, really strong support. It's the only real strong support we have. Look, like that's the only real strong support we have. So you could, in theory, be like, hey, this is support, and we're gonna front run that, like that ETF range, and I think that's okay. But I think generally, if that's gonna happen, how it's gonna happen is you're gonna get like a flash crash into this level that immediately wicks up, and then I mean I can draw a level there, but I think that's pretty useless because I don't think we're gonna get a close at this level without going to this level. But we could easily get a wick to this level and then go higher and never hit this level. So if you're looking for wicks, I think this is completely fine, and this is where you should be looking for them, like looking for nice entries. You can obviously also look higher, but I'm just saying, like, just generally from a support resistance kind of perspective. But yeah. Not from a closing perspective. I don't think we're going to close at 52 without going towards 47. Not your typical entry, but would you buy if we reclaim 68k close above the high? I mean, for me, the Bitcoin trade is done. Like, I'm not going to buy any Bitcoin. I'm going to buy altcoins, if anything. Like, I'm not really interested in buying Bitcoin. I think we're late enough in the cycle that altcoins are more attractive. It just depends on where. So if I'm supremely bullish on Bitcoin, I'll be looking for something that I think can outperform it and buy that instead. So you're not going to see me buy Bitcoin more likely than not, unless it giga nukes and I'm just like, I kind of just feel like holding something easy, maybe, but very likely just not. I think there's better things to trade, like Dogecoin, for example. This is one that I wanted to do today. It's also one that I wanted to put in the newsletter with Cred, but our newsletter got nuked by the provider that we have for whatever reason. Maybe because it's crypto, I don't know. So that's, if people have been wondering why that's been on a hiatus or whatever, that's why. Anyway, like that's one, for example, where I'd be much more interested in buying it than Bitcoin. And then like there's a few more, obviously. Pepe has been one that I've kept on mentioning. That's also been an excellent dip buy in the last day or two. But yeah, so basically I'm gonna look at, excuse that 4 hour, it's terrible. I'm too lazy to clean it up. I don't really use it anyway. But yeah, I'm gonna use Bitcoin to make informed decisions on the altcoins, but for nothing else. Why don't you change Substack? We probably will. Do you still think Doge gets close to the 0.1 level? I mean, it did. Like, look, like that is so close. Like 0.12. If my target is 1, which it is, I still think that isn't too unlikely, like for Dogecoin to go to 1. And excuse me for jumping from chart to chart. I'm just answering questions. Like if I think it's gonna go to 1, 0.12 or 0.1 doesn't really make that much of a difference. So that one is actually like, that got really close, and that's technically good enough, I think, as a pullback. So when would you get in at Doge? I mean, if I was actively monitoring and like trying to take a trade, I would have tried to take one today, or I mean on another dip a little bit lower. But the reason why I found Doge interesting is because it kind of dipped back into support on the BTC chart. So you had that, and you got pretty close to 0.1. So I think that was quite a nice trade. Now, if you get another pullback closer to 0.1, I mean, if it goes to 0.1, I'll probably buy it. Otherwise, I'm just kind of looking how today, how tomorrow, and how the day after on Bitcoin goes, right? If Bitcoin kind of confirms bullishly, I might just buy Doge without caring about where it is. Because even if it's at 0.2, if I'm targeting 1, that's not the worst in the world. But yeah, so high time frame Bitcoin, because that's kind of the important battle that we're kind of dealing with right now, and where I think the pullback basically has come from. The monthly time frame took out the high. We talked about this like last week. Took out the high, kind of retraced. It's quite important that it's closing green this month. Just based on how last month closed, like we had that resistance close last month. So if it closes red this month, that would confirm not only this resistance, but also this one. And that would not be great. And the weekly time frame is a little bit similar. It's just, basically the monthly is unconfirmed bearish right now. Depending on how it closes, it's gonna be neutral. Like if it closes like this, that's neutral. I think it would actually be neutral / bullish. If it closes below 61-ish, I think that'd be bearish. So that's unconfirmed and can be bearish, can be bullish, obviously, if it goes higher. The weekly time frame, that's the one that is technically confirmed as not the best. That did the same thing, took out the high, closed that resistance, and then dumped. So that's kind of what you don't want to see, obviously. Now, generally speaking, we're still in a massive uptrend, right? This is a massive uptrend. So dips are for buying. And I think if you're going to get a pullback, and if the monthly basically plays out bearishly, the best you can hope for on a bearish kind of view would be retracing most of this candle, which is quite hilarious because we had a year of upside, and the most bearish view that I can find is basically retracing one candle of that. it is the biggest one out of them all. But still, like that would be the bearish view. Basically, like you close below this, you go back to here, and then you go up. I think that would be the bearish view, which is quite bullish in my opinion. That's my bearish view anyway. Like if we close the monthly red, and then on the weekly time frame, you do have, and this is basically the support everyone keeps talking about. You do have this 52k support-ish. So on the weekly, it's better than on the daily, I think. So if we start losing 60k on the weekly time frame, I think we could argue for 52. What would be a bullish close on Bitcoin? I mean, anything that's green is decent. It really doesn't need to do anything other than close green. Suppose I'm short Bitcoin since 69k on Monday. Would you still target 45k at this time, or get out of the short and wait for a new setup? I think getting out of the short was quite nice at support. Generally, when I'm actively trading on the short side of things, that's generally what I'm doing. Like I short and then I close into support, basically here. And then if it rolls over, I just chase. And if it doesn't, I reposition higher. So technically from like a trade management perspective, I'd be looking for, on this, I'd be looking for a re-entry. But I don't do such terrible things anymore, shorting the market like a non-believer. So you are not as bearish anymore as you were yesterday. I'm the exact same amount of bearish as I was yesterday. This is like, this day doesn't change anything. It changes a little bit, right? Because the bounce is much better than it could have been, but technically nothing's changed. The only area where anything changes is above 68. So technically nothing has changed, but this is obviously a nice move. So you could argue like, hey, you have momentum on your side, whatever. And I mean, fair enough. But for me, nothing's really changed. Like I was bearish here in the 69, 68k area here, up here. It dumped, it retested it, like it retested the 68k area. And the nice thing about it is basically, and I mean, especially from a trade management perspective, if it closes back above 68, that would be an invalidation of sorts, right? So wouldn't lose money on that trade, just because I think, like if you come back there, like let's say it does something like this, like that starts looking quite good, right? That would also be, like if we come back into that 68 area generally, without just putting in a wick and then dumping immediately, that'd be a good bullish sign on the daily time frame. And the good thing is that the monthly isn't confirmed bearish yet, right? So you could get daily strength into monthly strength, as in that the monthly closes above where it is currently trading, and that'd be quite nice. If you believe Bitcoin will trade at 90k, why not just get on board with Doge now? Because I'm still semi vacationing, trading wise. But I think generally Doge, like that's not the worst play. And just buying it and praying, like on the Doge front, being like invalidation down here somewhere. Target up there, like that's the drawdown, that's the target. This is on log, so where is it? Not bad, no? So like I think that's not the worst generally, especially when it was trading at 0.12 or 0.13, because that's literally just 20% away from 0.1, which would be the optimal entry. And that's quite close. Don, what does your gut say? My gut says I wouldn't trust this too much. I think this could easily chop and fuck people over. It's just generally set up to chop people. So, like I'm not necessarily on board with any bullishness unless it actually shows that it is bullish and therefore it needs to move a little bit higher. But I'm also not like I was ragingly bearish at 69, 68. Otherwise, I wouldn't have mentioned a short, right? Seems kind of stupid to mention a short in this environment, right? When everything is kind of flying. So I had to have like quite a bit of conviction to do that, just generally, because I think like on the short side, giving an opinion on the short side when it's not time, I think is terrible. Like it's much better to be wrong bullish than the opposite. Now I'm just kind of like, now that we've had this move, I'm a little bit less so, as in like we moved like 10% lower, but I'm still leading that way. Duck, this is bull now. Bye. I mean, the reason why my gut is saying that this is like basically like if I would buy now, I'd be buying the top, is because sentiment is so horrendously wrong for it to be a bottom. I think people are very, very off, like just generally, it's a very weird dynamic in the market right now where you have the dumbest people basically winning, which is good when you get like an old season or whatever, but you have like a bunch of very, very stupid people winning right now, which is fair enough. In crypto, usually those get completely rinsed, but given we have the ETF flows, maybe they don't. But yeah, it's a little bit of an odd situation. Like if this was trading how it used to and how it usually does, this was 100% or like 95% would dump. It's just the question of, is the ETF gonna bail people out again? And that question I cannot answer. But then again, like the dumbest people have been getting shit on in this move actually. Like there has been so many liquidations and I don't know how. Like it's 10% down and people are getting liquidated on their positions, which is just utterly mind-boggling to me. Oh, excuse me. Hi Don, I'm a bit confused on where to buy if it plays out bearishly. We got weekly levels at 52k and then good levels at 45k. What's the best way to play it? I mean, it depends on, and I hate to, like, obviously, like, it depends is the answer that you really don't want to hear, right? Because the fuck is that supposed to mean? But it really, like, that's really how it is. It always depends on how you get to a level, right? So for example, let's say, and I do have to repeat, this is not necessarily how it's gonna play out or even how I think it plays out. Let's say it does this, which it kind of has already, right? Like it dumped towards weekly support, it bounced. Let's say it does this. If it's this steep, I mean that's a really good level to buy. That's basically people getting liquidated into your level. That seems like a decent level to buy, right? But if it plays out like this, then maybe, yeah, short term, this is a good level to buy, but it's almost guaranteed to just nuke through it directly afterwards and then maybe bounce. But this is not something you would want to buy. Like these bleed outs, no bueno. And then, like, if it does like something like this, and then nukes into it like this, that's like it's not as strong a buy as the other one that I painted, which is basically just straight down, but it's still decent enough. So it really depends, you know, like how do you get to the level? If you get into 52 when it like just straight up nukes, I think that's a really good level to buy. If it gets to there like to 52 when it bleeds, not a good buy. So yeah, it depends. And then there's obviously levels lower or not, whatever. I generally think 52, this area is decent for if the market moves quick. It basically retraces all of these 3 days. If it retraces all of that, because there's basically nothing, and this is why this level is bouncing. This is why I mentioned this level and why I ignored any of the levels above. Like you could have painted, like you could have put one here, could have done a bunch, right? But this is the last level of support where it's bouncing from right now. And those you generally don't want to fade on the first test. So this is the first test. If it comes back there, I think it's gonna fail, right? So something that bears could do, like let's say you closed your short into this level because it's the last support, and if it comes back or gets even close, right, towards like 63, 60, 62, I think at that point you can just short it and short into the support, which is a dumb thing to do normally, but in this instance wouldn't be the end of the world, I think. Explained it perfect. Thank you, Don. You helped me make my first 7 figs last cycle thanks to learning the way you think. Legend. happy you're making money, man. Make 52k level green. I can. But yeah, so it always depends. All of these levels depend, and this is why, like, sometimes I redraw something and people are like, why the fuck, and what does this mean? Like, this is all about context. This level was good because it's the last level before a void in here. It's also good because it's the psychological 60k round level. And if you think this is all hindsight, right, just check out 2 streams before this one, or 1 or 2. I talked about literally this level when we were trading up here, and I was like, this is the level that you want to be watching, and this is the reaction we've been having. Why would you sell? The halving is coming. If you look at history, we always pump after halving most of the time, maybe a small correction. I think the halving thing is a little bit dumb, not gonna lie. I generally Bitcoin, I think, and this is the better argument to make, right? Generally Bitcoin goes up. It has been going up. It generally does go up. So, and people just attribute it to whatever the fuck happens, right? They're like, oh, the halving, whatever. But I would not necessarily say that is true. Like, it might have been true for the first few, but the longer the halvings go on, the less important they are. Like, they are half as important every single halving, right? And that's just like mathematically, like you have like a big number, right? And I hate that I'm doing this, but let's say you have a big number, you halve it. Well, now you have a smaller number, right? And the more often you halve this, the less. I mean, there's just not that much Bitcoin going into circulation anyway. And if you halve it over and over and over again, which we've been doing, that has much less of an impact than just general market forces like people buying and selling. So at this point, I don't necessarily think the halving is that big of a deal. It does help, but I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh yeah, it's the halving, so it has to go up. No, I think it's overblown. Just generally, Bitcoin tends to go up. That's why we've been going up. Like, it's because it's a decent asset and it's a great one to trade. The whole, oh yeah, the supply is cut in half, is like, no, just no. Halving will mean more when BlackRock buys up the entire supply. Nah, man. I mean, just generally, it's just very little in comparison to what is going on anyway. When are you starting to trade again? What would be your trigger? If I see something that's really interesting. I mean, I was thinking about it at 60K, but it wasn't deep enough for me to be like, okay, this is really, really interesting. Now in hindsight, obviously it's bounced quite a bit. Like it's up, like what? Bitcoin's up like 8, 9, 10%, and some of the altcoins are up a little bit more, like Dogecoin's 14, 15. But if I see something that's really interesting, like I said, Dogecoin, for example, is one of the ones that I find interesting, just because I think there's a chance it goes to 1, and that chance is not necessarily little. I think there's like 30% chance that it does so, and there's another like 30% that it generally goes up. So if I buy somewhere close to here, and there's a like above 50% chance that it goes up generally, and then there's a small chance that it goes to 1. That seems like a decent bet, especially given like you're wrong below like somewhere below 0.1, maybe 0.8 or 6 or something, which is not that big of a loss in comparison to the gain you'd be making. So that's like an interesting trade to me. That's one of the ones that I've been watching. Are you having trouble getting to the way the market is Are you having trouble getting to the way the market is trading with the entrance of BlackRock? Yeah, it's been changing a little bit. I generally think it's a little bit, and I'm saying this unironically, and I've tweeted about this before. I think it's a little bit of a new paradigm, right? So the old rules don't necessarily apply as much as they used to, which just basically means that it's just trading very different, and that makes it harder for someone that's been around for a while, at least for me, like to read this correctly. This is why I'm like just generally a little bit more chill. It's good that I am like, back in the day I would have very strong opinions because I'm like, I know how this market works. Nowadays I'm a little bit more mature, and I'm like, I mean, it's different circumstances mean this market can just kind of crash all my expectations. So yeah, I find it a little bit more difficult than it used to be. Yeah, but still decently fine. You know, like I was like, I saw this down move coming decently enough. I was vocally bullish down here. Didn't buy because I was like still on vacation, but like I was vocally bullish here. Bull posted a bunch basically, so it's not like I'm completely offside, but it takes a little bit of, like, you would expect back in the days, you would expect more traps, more bullshit, and now it's a little bit more straightforward, which is not a bad thing per se. It's just something to get used to. What if it bounces up and never comes back to 60K? I mean, that's good generally. If it never comes back to 60K, that means you're gonna see Dogecoin trade at $1 or $2 even, which I find much more interesting than buying Bitcoin from 60 to 90K, to be fair. How long are you streaming so I know when to go to dinner? Like, I don't know, like 10, 20 minutes more. Can you explain why the slow grinds down are worse compared to the large nukes? I can, yeah. So basically, when the market moves like this, right? When you see a market move like this, especially in crypto, what happens is basically, and this is something that you can see in yourself. You just need to watch. Like if you're trading leverage, you will have noticed this in your thinking. If a market does this towards an area where you want, like where you're like wrong or whatever, like let's say we just do a hypothetical trade, right? So you're like, okay, this is the range, and it's been trading in a range for a while. It's done this, so you're like, it bounces here. You were afraid that to buy the low, so you're like, it's a little bit higher now. You're like, fuck it, let me buy here, because it's gonna go to the range high again, and then it does this, and just slowly bleeds towards the low, right? And you're like, my invalidation is below this low here somewhere, because I mean it's been a range. If it takes that out, that'd be quite, fuck my life, that'd be quite bad. And you're sitting in this trade and you're seeing this and you're in pain the entire way down, right? But you're like, it's not really dumping, it's just bleeding a little bit. It's okay. And then it moves and it gives you enough time to kind of reason yourself into believing that, yeah, it just needs to take out these stop losses here. And then it's going to go up. So my stop loss was down here, but let me move it down here, right? Because I mean, I don't want to be stopped out where it's going to reverse. I've been sitting in this trade for 10 days. Now I don't want to give up on it right before it goes back up again, right? And then it goes down. You're like, cool, now it's going to go back up. It does this and it just fucking nukes. And you take 10 times the loss that you would have otherwise taken. Now, the same trade where this happens, right? Where it goes straight down, you're like, oh shit, like even while it does this, you're like, oh shit, I was just wrong. You might just even like cut the code like quite early. Like, I mean, I got into this trade. It's aggressively moving against me immediately. You're going to be stopped out here and it's going to be fine, right? Like, you're like, this was just a shit idea. This one is going to make you believe while it's chopping, like that maybe you had the right idea. You're just a little bit early. Or you just get attached to the trade while you're sitting in it. Maybe you're paying funding for it too. So this one just traps people without necessarily a good way to get out, and just introduces a bunch like of shittiness into your trading. This one is different. So when you get these kind of leads into support, what happens usually is that people just completely, like a bunch of positions are completely offside. The market moves down and liquidates a bunch and then usually does it again. And I mean, this, yeah, just like boiling a frog, exactly. Like people are sitting there and they're just sweating, but the longer they are, they're just like, I don't want to move out of this anymore. So there you go. I hope that explains it somewhat. And this is just from something that I've experienced in my early days of trading, right? I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but this is how I've basically just looked at my own trading. I was like, this is just fucking dumb. I like the frog analogy. Like, you're basically just increasing the heat, but because it's so slowly, you don't really realize it. Whereas in this case, it just gets boiling hot and you're like, fuck this. So, yeah. So that is why it is different, and this is why you're buying this support, right? Like if you're buying this support here, all of these people that are sitting in this trade, you're trying to bail them out, and you never want to bail people out. What you want to do in trading, right, especially if you're doing it on leverage, you want to take advantage of people getting taken the fuck out, which sounds brutal, but that's just how it is, right? Like if you're trading leverage, you want someone else to, basically you want to loot someone else's corpse. And if you don't get that, it's not necessarily a good leverage trade. Whereas and in this case, you would be bailing all of these people out, right? Like they're in pain, they're sitting there, they've been doing dumb shit, and you're bailing them out. Whereas in this case, you nuke into support quite quickly, or even like what comes often after the bleed out down here is you loot the corpses. And that's usually like a good one. Whereas you don't want to jump into the boiling water. You want to get the frog out of the water once it's already like done and dead. You know what I mean? You don't want to jump in with the frog, and that's what you would be doing here. Don't buy highs, sell lows. Got it. I don't know when I said that, but yeah. Why is there always a similar bottom pattern on Bitcoin? I mean, just generally, markets behave in similar ways-ish. Okay. We've talked too much about frogs. earlier today was the best possible buy. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best possible buy, but it was a decent one in hindsight. Like that's a nice bounce, especially now with the last like hour or two. Prices, I don't even know where these levels. Oh yeah, that was my SFP stuff. Like that's the last 4 hours been quite good. But something that you want to avoid, right? And I'm not saying this has to happen, but something that is quite striking on this one is this like wave behavior where it keeps on, and it would be confirmed to have ended, right? That kind of like shit behavior here if we actually start moving above here again. Because then you have a shift in trend. Because clearly, look at this. There's been ever since, and I mean this, I would just ignore this is all ETF price action. But what we've been having is basically, ignore this, right? We have been having lows, highs, lows, highs, lows, highs. We ignore this. This doesn't count. Basically moved like this. All of this above and beyond, like this is just news price action. And then you still have that behavior here where you just make high lows, high highs. And I would say with this dump, something has changed. Like you can, like this the first time you had like this kind of, this size dump generally and with this velocity. And then we made a new high, kind of traded above it and fucked off down. And ever since then, it's been a little bit on the low time frames, right? This is, the high time frames are still very much trending up. So you would be forgiven for just kind of fading this and be like the low time frames might be in a downtrend, but the high time frames are not, which I think is actually quite a decent way to look at it. But what you want to get out of is basically this price action. And that's kind of what we've been doing, right? Where we've been basically like, we had a little bit of price action above it, but most of the price action has been kind of like in this diagonal, and that needs to break. And once it does break, maybe the maybe the low time frames actually influence the high time frames, and we get out of this bind that we have on the monthly and on the weekly time frame. This wave looks kind of like a boiling frog. Everyone's gonna see frogs now. Inverse price everywhere. This is clearly lower time frame downtrend, yeah. But the thing is with low time frame downtrends, right, is that, I mean, this is clearly a high time frame uptrend. Do I have anything on this chart that I want to keep? No. So this is clearly a higher time frame uptrend, right? So and so it's quite hard. Like, yeah, you can be bearish, and I mean, sometimes it just makes sense, but you also have to kind of keep in mind that if you're getting too bearish and full on bad hard, right? And this is something that people do where they just completely, they're like, okay, this has to go down now, and they just completely lose all reason, right? Like, for example, like this goes up here, consolidates at like 68, 69K. At that point, it's quite hard to be bearish in the lower time frames. But then people keep on holding on to that view, and that is something that you should not be doing. So yes, it's a low time frame downtrend, and I mean I am not necessarily too bullish, but obviously can change quite quickly. And if it gets anywhere close to where we were when I was like, this is actually quite bearish, I think it's cooked, and it's probably gonna go higher. What would make it a high time frame downtrend? I mean, a high time frame downtrend, I don't think you should be expecting, unless you think the cycle's over. Because technically speaking, and this is where it gets, so like I was like, this is a high time frame uptrend, right? And you have a low time frame downtrend, so like you shouldn't be too bearish. The problem with that is, and this is why you kind of have to be early on this, is that technically speaking, the high time frame, like we had a high time frame uptrend here until 30K broke. And I mean, that's kind of shit, right? Because it was at 70, it broke 30, and that's where the downtrend is confirmed, right? And it would be here the same, like this would have to basically break below 35, so more than half from where it was, to confirm a quite shitty downtrend, right? I wouldn't even necessarily be like, this is a this is a nice swing low. But technically speaking, you're not gonna get a high time frame downtrend before it's way too late. Because if you're holding from 17K down to 32 and you're like, oh, now it's in a downtrend, now I'm gonna sell, I think you're shit out of luck. Like, that's a terrible trade. So that's what makes it quite hard. Yeah, you can argue with like all of these time frames, whatever, but yeah, this is not really that useful. So the low time, we have to kind of look at the low time frames because this market moves so much so fast. Can you show us what needs to happen to turn bullish just to close above 68.3? I mean, technically, just fully technically, this is a bullish market, right? High time frame, this is an uptrend. It's still bullish. It would still be bullish if if this retests 45K. If it goes to 45K, this would still be hilariously bullish, right? Like, that's a bullish chart. It would even be fine to go to 30K and it'd still be a stupidly bullish chart. So what would it have to do to be bullish is quite the difficult question to answer. But a clean close on the monthly would be really good. That would kind of confirm that this is not as shit as it could be. Like, took out the high, closed below the body, like that'd be bad. Like, that's a bad signal. That's not what you want to see. But that's not necessarily high time frame bearish, because then I would expect lower lower levels as like 45, 50K to be retested and then still up, right? So technically monthly bullish, even if it retraces. But like I said, close above this level would be good. On the weekly time frame, yes, it did some not so great things. It's getting rejected by resistance. Okay, just the same kind of setup here, but it's still in the realms of this is actually quite okay, right? As in, like, it hasn't broken down below here yet, and it would still be hilariously bullish even if it retested 52K. Like, it's still like a stupidly dumb chart and hilariously bullish even if it retests 52, and then you'd still expect higher, right? So the question should not be like that. Like, how can, I mean, I don't, you guys are getting what I'm saying? Like, this is a hilariously bullish chart no matter what you're doing. And any kind of pullback would be interesting to buy. On the daily time frame, you could make an argument that this is bearish because it's a lower time frame downtrend, and then this is the only time frame we can actually like realistically talk about turning something from bearish to bullish, because I would argue that this is a bearish chart, and on that front you're right, like 68 point something close above there would kind of invalidate the idea that this is a false breakout, right? Like, you have a resistance here, false breakout, retest, dump. Now obviously today has kind of almost fully engulfed yesterday, so that's quite good on the bull side, but this is where you would want to see price go. And then this is the only chart where you can actually argue the bearishness per se. What would you need to see to reshort Bitcoin? I mean, I'm not really shorting it. I cannot. Just generally, tax-wise, it's a headache. It's not worth it for me. For me, not having exposure is basically being short enough. But if I was, basically, I shared the setup here at 68, 69. And the closer price gets to this, the closer you are to invalidation, right? Because then you can just trade around that. So if you shorted 68.69, like if I traded how I used to, 68.69 short, close at daily support, it bounces as close as I can get towards 68k would be where I would want to reshort. But yeah, there you go. If Bitcoin chops down, how can we tell when altcoins stop chopping and are worth buying? So if Bitcoin keeps going down, right, which to be fair, right now doesn't really look like it wants to. This is quite the explosive move, quite nice actually. But if Bitcoin keeps chopping down, you would want to buy whenever you think Bitcoin, like you would want to buy altcoins whenever you think Bitcoin's bottomed, basically. So I think generally like a lot of people are like looking at altcoins, looking at the levels there, and sometimes like for example, and I mean I hate that I'm using Doge as much as like an example, but like for example with Doge I like it because it's pretty straightforward, but most of the time you can basically just go through your list, you add all the altcoins that you like to a list, and then you have it day like today where Bitcoin is quite strong, and you just see whatever is like being bid up the strongest or is in like moves nicely, and those are the ones that you want to be trading whenever you think Bitcoin is bottoming. And it's been the same names for quite a while. Don, did you sell your pump airdrop? No, I haven't touched any of it. I think at some point like I had like, I don't know, like 60k worth of that just by like for holding wassies, but I don't know what it's worth right now. I didn't even check. If that goes up, like whatever, if it goes up 10x I would sell because then it's worth getting the wallet out, but otherwise I'll probably just not touch it. Unless the only way where I sell this kind of stuff, where I get like airdrops or whatever, is if I'm already cleaning wallets anyway. If I'm in the process of cleaning something, I might as well just do everything. But unless I have motivation or like a reason to do it, I will not touch it. Don, when are you doing a pre-sale on Solana? That's a good question. That is a good question. Once I get liquidated for all my net worth, then you'll see me do a Solana pre-sale, which is pretty hard if you're not trading leverage. So the chances are slim, my friends. We would make the best duck coin though, but for another life. Which altcoins would you buy? So I like. So Solana has been one for the short-term trading. So that's if I was trading the low time frames, Solana is a nice one. For higher time frame stuff, I like Dogecoin. I think it's one of the more brain dead plays. So that would be one of them. I like Uni, and that's been outperforming decently well. Like that just looks decent. I use it. I like it. Like that's like, look, this just not necessarily something that looks that bad. I think generally altcoins, like quite a few of them actually look quite decent. I talked about Pepe, but this Pepe is always like, it almost goes to where I want it to, and then it pumps way too strong. So Pepe is already out of reach again. But yeah, I like Doge. I like Uni. I like a few more that I don't want to talk about, because every time I talk about this shit, like for example Dogecoin, I could see just me not getting entry because I talk about it. 68k already done? What the fuck? Yeah, that's how it... Wait, was it 68k? No, 67 free. But yeah, that's a move. Frog is strong, yeah. Pepe has been insane, and it's actually not gone down as much as it could have. It went down quite a bit from the high to the low, like 45-50%, but I think there was more potential for dumpage, but it's been just quite strong. No, we don't have enough power to not let you get an entry, boy. Oh, you have not been around for long enough. Because otherwise you would know the pain of DonAlt's shilling Dogecoin at the peak of bottom, and I was shilling Dogecoin, and I'm not kidding, I was shilling it here. My bid was down here, and I was just like, oh, I'm just gonna post about it to both be able to make money and claim clout. And then my bid was the top bid on the Bitcoin pair, and I kept getting tagged, but not for much. And then people just market bought it up, and that was literally the peak of bottom before. So my bid, like my fills were the lowest. Doge went, but I got filled for so little, I got very upset and tilted off of this planet. So I have PTSD. Doge at 15 sats, yeah. Cormac says I got Doge at 15 sats. Fuck you, bro. Sold at 100. I mean, at least at least you didn't get all of it. Fucking assholes. It's okay. Duck, I remember I was also waiting for your level. We missed it by like 1% and went about 1,000,000% from there. Yeah, fucking stupid. Still tilted. And people are like, oh, how do you deal with having taken vacation during this like volatility? Dude, I literally bought this shit at 15 sats, and then out of tilt I sold it at like 30, because it was like I wanted to have so much more, and now I have so little, and it's at least a 2x. Fuck this, like I was just tilted. And then it went from 15 sats all the way to 1,250. And people are like, how do you not tilt seeing Bitcoin go up 10%? Dude, I could not care less. I've gone through so much worse. Bitcoin likes to do double tops, a double top on the higher time frames, and I'm out. So take out 73K and back under 69. I'm out. Do you agree? So what is you're saying Bitcoin should go above 73 and then go lower? I mean, maybe. Seems not necessarily too likely to me, but possible always. But like if it closes above like 69 on the weekly time frame, like that's the proper all-time high breakout. So I don't see how that would necessarily be too bearish. But I mean, I don't want to like get in your trade management. It's not how I would trade, but I think people should trade the way they want to trade, not how I trade. Mate, I still have PTSD from that sell at 100 sats. Could have made 400K. Dude, you don't want to know. You don't want to know how much. You don't want to know how much Doge I had, because I had enough. If I didn't sell for 2x, I had enough to buy multiple castles with that. But also you don't know how much my bid was and how much I would have made, because I'd be buying Twitter instead of fucking Elon Musk at that point. But that is how it is. And then if you go through that multiple times, and everyone I think that has been in the market for a while has gone through these things, you're like, okay, well, it's just how it goes. Where do you think we're right now in the cycle? I would argue somewhere here. I think there's like Bitcoin, I think has one more push, like one substantial push, as in like no matter if it goes low and then high, or if it just goes high, I think like, and I mean just a little bit high, but like 100K, I think ish is gonna be cycle top. So I think somewhere there. How can you put so much money in a single trade and not be fearful? I mean, if it's all relative, you know, like if, for example, I started out with like in total, like if I add everything up, and I mean, like I generally started out with $50. I bought Dogecoin with $50 or something way back, and that's what I put into the market. But like even if you disregard that, and then like I sometimes like I made a little bit more money on the side, and in total I put two grand in crypto, right? Like that's all the outside money that I put into crypto. Back then, if I put like $500 in a coin, or like $1,000 in a coin, and it went down 10%, I was obviously freaking out, right? Now, if I put $2,000 in a coin, like I will literally forget about the coin. I will literally forget that I have it, because it's just relative, you know? And so like if I buy like 10K of Dogecoin now, like it's not a big deal if that goes to zero to me, because whatever. So it's all relative. You shouldn't be putting that much money in that you're freaking out constantly, is what I'm trying to say. Because if you're freaking out constantly, you're gonna make mistakes. Like everyone is bull posting and I'm scared. I mean, I get it. Like, look at this. Like that's a nice fucking move. But I think generally this is the area where it's gonna get dicey. If like this is basically where we distributed before, here. So like in here it gets a little bit more scary. We'll see if it pushes through or not. Like that's where the bears start getting invalidated. So the closer you are to that, the more interesting it is for a short, I think. But also, do you want to short off of this momentum? It's actually quite hard to say, because that is a really nice move. Yeah, you're rich, we get that. I mean, it's also very relative. There's a lot of people in this market that are much more, like that have much more than me. You know what I mean? Like there's people that don't give a fuck if they have like 100 or like 1 million of a coin lying around somewhere. And I'm not at that level where I'm like, okay, I would forget about, like if I bought $1 million worth of Dogecoin, I wouldn't forget about that. But other people might. So it's all relative. Is there a chance to buy altcoins if it goes over 68K? I mean, yeah. Like generally, if Bitcoin goes up aggressively, usually altcoins take a little bit of a dip. So what happens, and this is what you see here in Dogecoin, this is what you will see on all the other coins as well, like on the low time frames. Let me find a good one. Like look, and I know this is like a shitty example, but you had like the last 10-15 minutes, right? Uni BTC went down, and the reason for that is because it could not keep up with this move. And this is something that you're gonna see quite a bit. Like whenever you have something, like whenever you have Bitcoin aggressively move up, you're gonna see a little bit of relative weakness on the altcoins. And then, but the moment Bitcoin starts moving up, right? So for example, like here, down here, everyone is afraid that it's actually gonna just nuke. So they're not in altcoins, but the moment it starts moving up towards like here, where you get like a little bit of an uptrend going, chance of a little bit of a breakout, whatever, in here, or even after this breakout, and this is what you will see, like at my time 650, or like around 6 to 650 right? Now we go and look at what altcoins did relative to it. For example, Solana, look, 6 to 650, like that's where this started moving. And then it started going back down when Bitcoin went too aggressive. And this is something that you will always see, like in the early stages of Bitcoin kind of getting people out of that fearful zone, you will see altcoins outperform, and in the moment it pops, you will see altcoins underperform. And that doesn't only work on the 5-minute chart, that will work on the bigger time frames too, generally speaking. There's obviously some altcoins that just generally outperform. Solana has been completely dominating, no matter what Bitcoin has been doing. But like if you look at shitty coins, you can see it the best, like Litecoin, XRP, those. On the higher time frames, you look at the weekly time frame, Bitcoin's been going too vertical for this to keep up with. So Litecoin, Bitcoin, been dumping like this, and you can kind of see pretty much the inverse of Bitcoin. So the moment this slows down a little bit, but isn't at a scary point, altcoins will do well. So is it still worth buying altcoins with a close above 68.3, or better to just trade Bitcoin? Fucking yeah. I'm gonna say it depends again. But if you get like a nice dip off of Bitcoin breaking out, like a nice, like a quite aggressive Bitcoin dominance dip, basically, then yeah, the altcoins might be a good play. Are you going to do first day altcoins? More likely than not, yeah, probably. Anyway, I got a bounce. I hope that helped. It was a little bit all over the place. But I mean, Bitcoin went up during it, so at least that's something. We'll see how that sticks. Like I said, this is the area where it's actually getting dicey, and like we went from support to resistance quite fast, which is good, I think. Like if it did something shitty like this again, like where it goes up slowly like this, and then just drifts back again like that, like basically exactly what we had here or here, that's not something you would want to see. This is a little better, right? So maybe it breaks it, that'd be nice, then be bullish again, and the altcoins are going to be much more fun than how they would be otherwise. So yeah, thanks for coming by, appreciate the support, hope you learned anything from that. I don't fucking know, maybe not. But yeah, appreciate you hanging out, and appreciate Woo for sponsoring the show. Go check them out, links are in the description, and we'll be able to talk about this tomorrow most likely, whether the breakout stuck or not. Would be quite nice, then I can happily go and trade my Dogecoin. If not, gonna have to wait a little bit longer. So yeah, see ya guys, bye bye.